Signs of the Southland, Wednesday edition, July 27th, 2022. We have a special guest with us today, Mr. Ken Sugiura from the Atlanta Journal-Constitution. Mr. Purdy has known Ken for a while with his work with the technique. So, Jack, I'm actually going to hand it off to you. Why don't you introduce our guest and get us rolling here?
Yeah, so Ken came to the technique office this past spring semester and hung out with a bunch of us, kind of gave us the lowdown of like, here's how you do this, because all of us were brand spanking new post-COVID to how to run a newspaper and everything. And he was really helpful. And then I've just been picking his brain pretty much ever since. So, and then was like, well, I'll take you up on this if you're willing to come on. And then he said yes. And what a fool he might be for doing that. So we'll see how this goes. But yeah, thanks for coming, Ken.
Yeah, my pleasure. Always happy to talk Georgia Tech and love your guys' work. So happy to join you.
Yeah. Well, so let's do the part that we did at the technique office again, just for those that don't know your background. Like, how did you get to? I guess what's the short way of saying I now write about Georgia Tech at the AJC?
Okay. Well, I may go too far, but feel free to stop me. So I grew up outside of Chicago. When in high school, I grew up a big sports fan. I read Chicago Tribune and Sports Illustrated a ton, and kind of got it planted in my mind. That seems like a really cool career. When I got to college, I started working for my school paper, which at University of Michigan, and there I kind of got. That's where I guess the journalism bug bit me, so to speak. And I thought, I think I'm okay at this, and I really enjoy it, and so I'll give it a shot. And so that led to internships, and I got to the AJC in 1998, and I covered a few different things. I covered high schools, NFL, and the Falcons, and some other stuff. And then starting in 2011, full time, I started covering tech. So that's been 11 years now. So I've seen a lot. But yeah, that's basically how I got to this point.
So you just barely missed the Falcons' good stretch. I'm so sorry.
Yeah, I was there for
you're there for the first bit. You were there for that first bit of Matt Ryan.
I was there for the very start of Michael Vick's career with the Falcons, and I was thankfully not there when the more notorious parts of it began. So yeah.
Ken, I gotta ask. As a Chicago, currently sitting just outside of Chicago, guy myself. You said you bit the sports bug in town. I got to know, where'd you go to school, and who was your favorite Tribune writer? Because I grew up reading the Trib too.
Every morning when I've never done something. So
really,
I went to New Trier, which is where the rich snotty kid went to, and still go to. But I guess the one I read the most was, his name was Bernie Lincecum. He was a columnist in the, when I was much older than you, I was in the 80s and early 90s was kind of when I was reading the most. I imagine he's long since gone, but he was the one I think who I really loved reading, and kind of gave me an appreciation for kind of what you could do with words and writing about sports. I think made it really entertaining.
That's cool. I recognize the name, but I really like Paul Sullivan, but just
yeah.
Things.
I mean, I don't know if you've read it. He wrote a book about covering the Cubs. That's probably very old, but yeah, that was one of those things that kind of gave me an inside scoop or an inside kind of picture of what it's like to cover a team, and it was good stuff. Yeah.
That's cool, and that fulfills my one reference to Chicago that we got to get in on every podcast.
Yeah,
so,
really just one? Hold on. No. Is it just really one? Because I feel like you raise that quota every time we record.
And we can talk about tech athletes from the Chicago area or something like that.
I got some opinions on that too. So
he definitely,
yeah,
he absolutely does. He absolutely does.
That's another niche next summer topic.
Right? Yeah.
I'll bring my list. Content. I have heard of Paul Sullivan. That's all I can contribute to that. And that Cubs game. Also, well, this is fun. Me and Jake did figure out we were at the same Cubs game before we knew each other in the early, in 2012 or 13 or something like that.
Yeah, long time ago. Yeah. I have the scorecard for it on my shelf, but that would make for bad podcasting. So
that would make
podcasting is a visual medium, Mr. Grant.
Wow,
nice.
Not to hijack the podcast. You got
that. That was a good hijacking. Okay, so more for this most recent year. I mean, this was a fantastic year, I think, in terms of across the board for tech athletics. Was there any what's your general take in terms of know you can give a letter grade, or if there's just something, if you just have like a synopsis of like how you would assess what 2021, 2022 was for Tech athletics.
Boy, I mean, it's funny, and I think maybe we may get into this later, but obviously, I think most people's impression of how the year went, or any year goes, is strongly weighted towards football and then men's basketball, and obviously those two teams this past year were not very successful at all.
Yep.
And then so in some ways, it's unfortunate that a lot of teams did really well, but just don't get the sort of notoriety that those teams do. Particularly with the volleyball team, the golf team always is strong. Women's basketball into the tournament, and women's tennis is they've like something like a 21-year streak of going to the tournament. So overall, this, I don't know if you guys pay attention to this, but there's the Directors Cup, I think it's called, that weights every sport equally and measures whether you go to the tournament or not in your sport. And Tech, while not, they've done about as well as they have in the last several years, over the last couple of years. And so from that perspective, it probably was a pretty good year. But obviously, when you weight football, if that's how you look at it, it wasn't a very good year at all. So when I think about it, just from a how are they doing perspective, I feel like they did pretty well, like as I said, but I can understand why not everyone would share that perspective.
Yeah. I was going to say the Directors Cup is tough too, just because there's some of those schools that, and I know that they cap, with a certain number that you can have scoring there, but there's just some that just, you got 25 sports, right. That's 8 more chances to have a really special year. But I think you hit it really well. Hey, I paid for volleyball season tickets for the first time last year, and I will be doing that again this year because I got a lot of value out of that, even if it's not, it's not a Saturday of being in Bobby Dodd, right? And but no, they had a great little year to themselves. It was a nice time. But,
Mike Flynn, I'll say this one thing real quick. Yeah, he the head communications guy in the department, director more than guy, but he was letting me know, like, hey, I sent out this release about the Directors Cup thing, and I said it's too bad they don't have a weighted by like the number of sports that the school has, because Tech would do far better. Yeah. And he said, I'm not going to do it, but you're welcome to figure that out yourself if you want. And I was thinking about it, at least on like an ACC level, but I think other things got in the way. So yeah, they'll have to be what they are.
The thing is, like, when we first started doing this podcast and I first started writing from the Rumble seat, one of the first things that I looked into was the Directors Cup. I think this was 2018, Jake, if you remember. We actually sent in a question to Todd Stansbury's podcast asking about the state of the program and where things were headed, how they were planning to invest in the program and improve on that score, because a lot of the graphics, a lot of the tweets that we've seen from the athletic department this cycle is that they are saying, hey, these are the highest rankings that we've ever had, and progressively higher since that sort of very 2018, 2019, or I think it might have been 17, 18.
I think it was 17, 18. Yeah.
And because we had football not making a bowl, basketball still hadn't made the tournament again. Women's basketball was going through an upheaval. Baseball was struggling. Softball was struggling. But now a lot of those programs, maybe the 2 major revenue ones aside, are all thriving. So, right? And it's sort of been an interesting, I think you mentioned this too, Ken, it's been an interesting growth period the last 4 or 5 years, especially if you've been on campus as a student, to see that trajectory.
Yeah, I would agree. With softball with, Eileen Morales, and obviously Mel Fortner at basketball, they made some good hires. And I've talked with Todd a few times about this, kind of what he sees happening. And I think he's mentioned, different things, just that I think there's maybe a culture of different teams and coaches and athletes saying, okay, let's look, the tennis team is making the tournament, we need to step it up, or the basketball team, or whomever it is. And I think the thing too that coaches have mentioned to me is that I think they feel supported by Todd and encouraged, and certainly you see it, with the way that Obviously you can have your opinions about how things are going, but with basketball, for instance, you could have very easily let Josh Passer go, for various reasons over the last several years, but that the patience was awarded with the tournament in an ACC championship a couple of years ago. So it's I guess long term we'll see with football and basketball particularly whether that patience be rewarded on a consistent basis, but maybe it's things like that I think the coaches are responding to.
Yeah. On that note, on Stansbury, what have you? I mean, you said you talked to him a few times. What have you gleaned about like how he's? I guess is there a way you would diagnose his leadership style, or like if there was a way, like a couple terms you would like put to like, okay, this is just how Stansbury runs this compared to other guys. Like, what have you seen?
Boy, I think he's happy to be behind the scenes, and doing just being the guy that's there when you lose and saying, hey, giving you a pat on your shoulder and saying keep it up and being supportive in that way, and just talking to the coaches and finding out what do you need from us to win. Certainly there's the fundraising aspect of it that's huge to what he does, and certainly he's done his part in getting the funding for the capital campaign. But I think to go back to what I was saying, maybe when I see like how he operates, he's not the guy that you're going to see, strutting around on the sidelines or whatever, or making himself known. But I think he's maybe behind the scenes is where he's probably strongest and probably most comfortable for that matter.
That's fair. And I think you've kind of like hit around the edges at like a big concept, at least in the honestly, I hear it the most applied to college football, but I think you could apply it to anywhere in college sports. Athletic department is the term, like alignment, making sure that like, there is that cohesion between, as you said, like different like teams and athletes, but also like athletic director to his program. And, I think like that, the improving directors cup and, just some of the general successes, even men's basketball ACC championship is like a product of, everyone really getting on the same page. And if that page is winning, then I think everyone can get behind that, even if it comes at different times for different people.
Yeah, I would agree. I think, from what I get the sense and from people talking to people, I think it's a group of people that are all, trying to support each other and are happy for each other's successes. I don't know if that happens everywhere, but you certainly see that happening at Tech. And like, for instance, like I wrote a story kind of touching on something we were talking about, it's been maybe interesting or noteworthy. And this year when Title IX is celebrating its 50th anniversary, marking its 50th anniversary, that, a lot of the women's teams at Tech have done well. And I spoke with Eileen Morales about this, or not about that specifically, but about just how many teams have done well on the women's side. And she was saying how, that when she got there, she leaned a lot on Michelle Collier, the volleyball coach, to, how have you done things? And then there, I think she was saying it was the two of them, their offices are close to each other. So they end up spending a lot of time, bouncing ideas off of each other and supporting one another. So I think there definitely is that aspect of the culture within the department.
I think it's really telling how often you see like the two of them or like Nell at each other's events and things like that. Like that. Yeah. It's very
also
easy
in
to
each
not
other's
do
Twitter
things.
feeds. Especially in each other's Twitter feeds. I see that all the time.
But it's if there's one thing I learned when I was at Tech in college, it's very easy not to do things. So I try and pay attention when I see people, doing things. So
right.
Yeah, that I like. I think most of the softball games I went to, Collier or someone from the volleyball team was there, whether it was one of her assistants or whoever. Now I only went to like 4 or 5, but of those 4 or 5, they were there if they weren't on the road. So, and I mean, also it's like right next to the to their offices anyway, so like, it's an easy walk if they feel like watching 2 innings.
And I know you probably get into the stadium with a press pass, but I will say the best value in Midtown is paying $2 to get into a softball game and then $3 for a hot dog. Can't beat that anywhere. So
that's good.
Duly noted.
Nice. We know I guess on the Title IX stuff, we know that the school isn't fully compliant yet, like in terms of scholarship ratio and whatnot. us three have had our whole discussion of what we would do to solve that problem. But do you have, I guess in terms of like what your favorite would be and what you think might be best for tech, what sport do you think is the best one to cross that line into full compliancy?
That's a tough one. I mean, I know they're considering it, and I mean, I guess, are you talking about like what's a sport that I would want to see, or what would be like the most?
I guess both. Like
or...
let's say which one you would like to cover if you had to pick a sport, and then if you have an idea of like what might be best for tech as an institution, what would that sport, or for the athletic association, what would that sport be?
Or if you just have a favorite sport that we don't like have now, that works too.
Yeah. As far, I mean, I guess as far as the sport I'd want to cover, I mean, I should say that I don't really. I mean, we'll do this. Like I try to cover as much as I can the non-revenue sports. I don't get to do it as much, but I certainly enjoy soccer, and that's obviously a very popular sport. What else? I mean, it's certainly too, like when you think about different schools programs and what they have and don't have, like tech is pretty rare in not having either soccer team, so maybe that would be it. But as far as like and I don't know enough about like what kind of gives you the best bang for the buck as far as cost of the program versus the number of athletes it's going to give you to kind of get you into Title IX compliance. I've thought that golf would potentially be easy just because you don't need to build anything for it. There's already a practice facility, and
all you got to do is hire some coaches, and you're pretty much
right. At that point. I don't know if that but I don't know if that would give you enough numbers to make it worth the investment of a new team. But so I and obviously like a sport like, well, I mean, I don't know like how much crew costs, and if I could conceive of being pretty expensive, but I don't know that it is. I mean, I could also conceive of being not that of an investment because maybe you build a boathouse, I guess, and you have a locker room space, but you don't need to build a gym or a stadium for that. But the problem with soccer, though, and I'm sorry, I don't know where it would go. I guess now maybe you could play in Bobby Dodd because they have the turf. But I don't know. Yeah, it's a good question. I'd be curious to hear what your guys' thoughts are.
I was gonna say I've honestly never thought about the rowing thing, but in college I was pretty involved with the club sports world. And just hearing what the rowing guys had to do and gals had to do just to like get on the water, like I was like, you mean you're driving that at 5 a.m. kind of thing? So it's Clemson's really lucky they got that lake right there, kind of thing. But man, no, that I just know that there's a lot of schools that have absolutely massive rowing teams. So maybe you do get a lot of bang for your buck there. That's honestly something I had never considered. So interesting to think about.
Yeah, I didn't think about that much either. But yeah, I mean, I guess in terms of like ease of being inside the program, it'd be a lot harder in terms of just sheer transportation versus everything else. We did do a whole podcast about a month ago about how we would solve the soccer problem. Including where to play. We figured out I don't want to say we figured out. We concluded the best option was capping the connector and putting the stadium there instead of playing in Bobby Dodd because of how close the brick walls are, and how it's a miracle like Greg Garza or Joseph Martinez didn't get their ankles broken while they were playing there for United. But
you'd be very surprised how good the fit is across the connector. Like it's actually at like very good.
It's very expensive
and needs for stadium seating. Like it worked a lot better than we thought it was going to, and we know it's an active like thing the city's considering too in some form or fashion. It's just
like making like a park or something like that, or
This was a late at night harebrained scheme that just had a little too much credibility, way not enough money, but you know, hey, throw money at the problem.
It weirdly made sense. It was the weirdest thing is after we talked ourselves into it by the time
we really did.
Well, it'd be easy. I mean, they'd have a kind of not a captive audience, but like you have a lot of people just walking around Midtown. It'd be easier for them to draw, I would think, if you're in the middle of town. But that does seem like a bit of an investment.
Yeah, that's a bit. I mean, they are raising $2 billion now, though. So I mean,
yeah. Well, what's an extra 500 million or whatever?
Exactly.
Have you wanted to turn your 2 billion into 1 billion real fast? This is how you do that.
You can either invest it in crypto or build a connector cap.
Yeah, but I'm sure they name it after whoever made the donation. So yeah,
that's true. That's very true.
Akshay Ishwaran Field. That's what I'm hearing.
If only.
Someone asked the Zelnax how much money they got left hanging in there to fund that. I'll go back to your point about like trying to like give all the sports their shot at coverage when you're doing your writing. So you only have so much time really, or so much. I mean, online at least gives you infinite space in theory to just write about whatever, but there also is just the man hours and all that goes into it. I guess how do you decide? I guess football season kind of dominates, so it's hard to escape it then.
Right.
And it's not really many competing sports at the time. It's early season volleyball. It's not like we have any soccer, of course. So I guess later on, especially during basketball and later, like how do you figure out for yourself where you want to invest your time in what sport on campus?
Well, a lot of it is, as you touched on, kind of what else is going on that requires my time. And obviously, like during football, it's pretty much all I do during the football season. Basketball, I have a little more time to write about other things. But I think, and then in the spring is particularly when spring football ends, which this year was much earlier. I have more time to devote to other things, which is what I'm doing. So a lot of it is just how much time I have. But then I think as far as like writing about other sports, like softball or baseball or golf or whatever, tennis, is just basically how those teams are doing, and maybe if there's an interesting story that I feel like should be shared with a wider audience. So I mean, this past year, like for instance, I don't know that I'd written about softball in probably a couple of years to my chagrin, but they made the tournament. I thought that was definitely worth writing about. And then let's see. Actually, we did something like Chip Towers, my colleague who covers Georgia. He and I had an idea, and hopefully it turned out okay, that we wanted to cover every single Tech Georgia competition.
Wow, that's cool.
And so I ended up covering the women's tennis match at Tech, which they lost. I covered baseball and the women's basketball. No. Women's basketball, I wasn't able to, but I ended up doing more than it probably, it enabled me to get a little farther out than I would have. So I was going to do that. But basically, to answer your question, it largely determined by just if those teams are doing well and probably worthy of writing about, because of bringing attention to them because of their success.
Right. Yeah. This is a more nerdy question. I don't know if you look at your page views, but like, do you see a noticeable difference in like what's gaining more traffic by sport, or like is those softball pieces like still getting 70 to 80% of what your average football article is getting?
I confess I don't look at it probably as much as I should, but I do know that largely speaking, football is as you might expect, and you probably maybe even sits on your own site of it gets a lot more attention and traction than a story. I mean, and I hate it because which I think of a story that I'm at, but talking with Eileen Rouse about the softball team, it's kind of a cool story. She's a Tech grad, has raised this team from really being towards the bottom of the ACC into the team that it was when she was there, and I think that's kind of a neat story. And I think most Tech fans, whether they're diehard softball fans or not, would be interested to know that. But for whatever reason, different people have different reasons. I'm sure it doesn't. It just doesn't get the same level of interest, which is I can't make people read things, and there's a lot of factors going on there, but that's generally how it is.
I was gonna say 70 to 80% of a football article would be, I think, my best day ever for writing out ref sports. So, oh no, it gets us traffic too. So.
I didn't know. I'm still new to this.
I'm giving you our time, Jack. It's all good.
I guess so. The football versus everything else thing. I mean, Tech. As I was writing this question, I was like, oh, Tech is a lot like those European sports clubs that like are everything. Like there are a bunch of different sports. Like Barcelona's got like 5 or 6. Real Madrid's got like 10 different sports that they have, and it's just not a concept we have that concept here of like a place where you have a lot of different sports under the same banner. But in Europe, it's professionals doing that same thing. Like Pau Gasol, I think, played for Real Madrid or Barcelona at one point.
Really?
Yeah, one of their basketball teams. And Ricky Rubio came from one of those teams as well.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah. So, but on the U.S. side, it's like it's really different. And I mean, obviously in Europe, it's like it's soccer and then everything else. Like it's just how it rolls there. But you get at least everyone gets a little bit of everything there. Here, it's just so much. At least from what I noticed, there's just a massive dichotomy of the big sports versus everything else. I guess we might be repeating the same points here, but I guess I want to pick your brain. Is like, do you think it's healthy for these, especially with the whole football stuff going on right now with the conferences? Like, do you think this is a healthy trend for college sports to be so dominant on a couple sports when the NCAA, and very well, I might say, especially post Title IX, is like trying to spread its weight everywhere and trying to make sure as many athletes they can very well get covered,
right?
In terms of like opportunities and good places to play and just everything about being out of school.
Yeah.
I guess do you think the nature of things right now in college sports is in a healthy spot, or just just thinking about where this is probably going post conference realignment and whatnot? Like, how is the current arrangement, you think, good for all the sports in a sense?
Boy, I mean, I would say not. I mean, I think, when one sport is kind of paying the bills and driving the bus for all the other sports, for a lot of reasons, it's definitely is a good thing. And like for to bring up how it's shaping conference realignment or affecting it, UCLA and USC and the Big Ten, for a lot of reasons, it just doesn't, I mean, it makes sense financially, but just in almost every other way, it doesn't. And so, I can see where USC going to, to play the traditional Big Ten schools, I guess, are going to the Midwest to play football is, has some merit and people would be interested. But, the swimming team at UCLA going to wherever, Ann Arbor or Champaign or whatever for a meet,
right?
Although I guess mostly they don't have dual meets anymore much, but regardless, going cross country when they would probably be better suited in a lot of ways, just staying regional. That's something's kind of lost there. But as far as just like, is it healthy? It's, I guess I just sort of look at it as the way it is. And I would say this, like one thing that's you've seen happen, like with the women's basketball tournament, there was obviously, in 2021, I guess it was, when the two tournaments were in Indianapolis or Indiana and San Antonio, there was obviously a lot of issues raised about this really isn't equal and the whole thing with the locker rooms or the weight rooms rather. And I think one thing you've seen is that, people, when you put the women's tournament on, people watch it. And the same thing was true, I think, with the volleyball tournament, the NCAA tournament for women's volleyball. And so, I don't need it. I guess it may never reach the point where it's even close to playing the same kind of revenue and eyeballs as football is. But I think too, there's probably something to be said for, if you, and I guess as well as one of those kind of chicken and egg things of, if you put more marketing muscle behind volleyball or gymnastics or whatever, are you going to see that sort of return? And I would think, at least to some degree, it's proven that it's working and that there's interest there, and it's just a matter of different media organizations, and probably including me, being willing to say, hey, this is important and people care about it, and maybe if we get the ball rolling more, that'll have an impact on ultimately on viewership and revenue.
Yeah, I mean that's it's not a problem that'll get solved fast by any means. I mean if you're adding all the sports, you're trying to invest more dollars, and that's not. Only very few schools can do that on a dime and be like, okay, yeah, we've got the extra X millions from football ticket revenue. We just need to figure out how to spend properly or decide what's the next building going to be in some cases, especially with like Wake Forest and teams like that.
Mhm.
I guess okay. Yeah,
well, I was going to add, like, you saw a renewed focus from ESPN, so your broadcast partners, on the Women's College World Series this year, right?
Yeah.
And that drew
Right.
the final, the championship final for that drew as many, if not, I think it was more than the men's.
Really? Huh.
And then the baseball
yeah,
one. So
yeah, it did.
It's not just on the onus isn't just on the schools, right? It's also on the broadcast partners, and especially ESPN. It holds the rights to all of the non-men's basketball tournaments. Like, if they are willing to put in the effort in advertising, then obviously, like, people are going to watch it. But it's incumbent both on the investment there, I think, is incumbent on both ends, right?
Yeah. Go ahead, Jake.
Can I take a little bit of a rewind it back? I honestly am not well versed in the European soccer world. I am barely versed in the American soccer world. As
is much more complicated than the other, I'll say.
As these two fine gentlemen know, I just kind of, Akshay's like, let's go to the Fire Atlanta United game. I'm like, okay, cool. There, soccer. I honestly didn't know that they had such extenuating programs outside of the main soccer, and honestly, I think that's kind of fitting. You look in a lot of trends in nature, in data, where there's a large focus on one thing and progressively smaller. What those relationships are does vary depending on what the phenomena is that you're looking at. But like, at the end of the day, something's going to drive the boat, right? Like, I think football, just being a cultural touchstone and kind of almost like a forced scarcity too, right? You have 12 days a year. What's going to happen? That I don't know. There's obviously it's not a perfect system, but there's a magic and an allure to it in a way that I think it is exciting. Not to completely undermine obviously there's still issues and flaws because and those trade-offs do need to be measured, but no, I just thought that was an interesting tidbit to know that they do have basketball. I don't know if they have hockey over there, but other stuff other than the soccer. So
the Scandinavians and the Eastern Europeans very much do. That's where half the NHL comes from, for the most part. Is people mooching off of those teams. But yeah, like, they don't do college sports in Europe though, so there's a vacuum for this kind of stuff that's filled up by universities and institutes here. So that's a way in how it gets filled. Related in terms of how now NIL is totally just throwing another massive monkey wrench in the entire landscape of everything. Tech is in a weird spot because it's not like you can just like ignore the academics when you show up here. Like, I mean, if you're a Scheller student, having been there, there's ways where you kind of can, but it's not as easy as other spots.
Right.
And I've been with enough professors to where they don't exactly just give you an A and let you walk for the most part.
We try not to hold it against Jack that he graduated from Scheller.
I know where I stand. I've had to convince people that my degree did not take the same number of hours, despite having the same words on it as many other folks in the institute.
All of them are the same but two, Jack. All of them the same but two.
Y'all need to give yourselves more credit.
We do all right. But all I have to say is, like, in terms of like, okay, now you can go about just about anywhere you want, and when you come to Tech, athletically, it may be a very good situation for you, and I'd argue for a lot of the teams, it would be a great spot for people to show up to. But how much do you think is the academic portion of that decision going to help or hurt Tech? Because that could, in some ways, I can think about how that's going to put this further down in terms of where people would want to go, or just kind of works out and it's just grad transfers like we see with Cameron Swartz this year, or people like that. I mean, what do you think about that?
Like, as far as like how much the academic rigor of Tech is going to affect recruiting and so forth. Like, kind of in light of NIL, or just generally, or
well, NIL, and also more just the loosening transfer regulations as well. In terms of being able to just kind of hop on the portal and be like, all right, let me see what's out there.
Yeah. Well, I'll get to that part first, because I think I have a more concise answer. I do think, if we get to a place, as it looks like they're headed, that the NCAA will say, kids can transfer an unlimited number of times. I would see that probably hurting tech. I mean, one thing I've heard from coaches is that it can be hard to get kids into tech, for all the reasons you guys are aware of just, credits transferring and matching up at what, and if a kid's majoring in, I don't know, what's like the famous football major, like,
Business
recreation science.
administration.
Yeah, well, yes, but other schools, if family science or whatever, just some sort of soft major somewhere else, that it's going to be harder to get a kid into tech. And so if that movement continues and kids are going from school A to school B to school C, tech is not going to be able to be a part of that as much as other schools might. As far as NIL goes, I guess that conceivably could also be negatively impactful to tech, just on if kids are going to be motivated by, I'm going to go to the school where I'm going to get the best deal. That's probably just the way things are looking. Tech isn't at the forefront of putting together big money collectives, and so that's going to be a strike against tech, but B, that's just knocking down, I want to get a good degree at the school I go to, and not that factor is going to get knocked down a peg. And so, it's for better or worse, not going to be in tech's favor. But yeah, I guess what probably, the people that are in charge of tech would say is, we've still got to just find the kids that want to come to a school for, quote, the right reasons of wanting a good degree and the connections and so forth. And I think there are kids like that. Like, I think there, as much as there's a sense of everyone is asking how much can I make an NIL, I think there's still kids that maybe they're interested in it but aren't driven by it. So and maybe now more schools are competing for those kids if they don't have the NIL packages that other schools do. But there's still opportunities, but maybe they're not going to be as, not that they were wide and deep before, but maybe even less so than now.
Yeah, I think it's just interesting looking at how it's like different flavors of the same problem that people have been talking about for years and years, and just like the constant evolution of it, right? Like, Bobby Dodd, 67 years ago was getting we need X major, to stay competitive. And 30 years before that, the whole, I don't actually know how much you know about this, but the whole like taking the business school or the commerce school at the time and shipping it out is, the same problem. What are the athletes going to study? And, you go 30 years before that, and at the dawn of the NCAA, there's, ringers and people getting paid and stuff like that. Like, it's interesting to see that, like, how much the more things change, the more they kind of, obviously nothing stays the same, but modern problems, rooted in just the same. I think that's one of the more interesting things about college sports personally. And that's, there's not really a question buried in there, but, like it's weird to see the landscape change, because it's always going to keep changing. And I don't know. I think it's changed faster, not to speak for Akshay and Jack, just off the cuff, but I think it's changed faster in the last 2 years than any of us on our side would have expected. I don't know if you feel the same way, but
yeah, I would say, yeah.
Good stuff. Okay, we'll go lighter to finish up here. Do you have a favorite anecdote covering? I guess, pick any moment. Do you have a favorite, just general aside thing that ever happened?
Wow. Man, like funny thing has happened, or just like my favorite event that I've covered, or
I'm gonna bet the funny stuff doesn't make it out as much. So let's go with that.
Okay. Now I gotta come up with something. Man, I'm the worst at thinking of stuff like this. I think, man, Well, I mean, I mean, this is not funny, but like one kind of when I think about my experiences covering tech and just going places, and I think one actually, well, yeah, I'll actually, this isn't funny, haha, funny, but it's only memorable. So this, it was the 20, it was Josh Pastner's second season, 17, 18. And this was all right in the midst of the Ron Bell stuff. And I was flying to Pittsburgh, and I forgot my driver's license.
Ooh.
And so I was able to get through security at Hartsfield. And this is always, I'm not sure how this happened, but with a tech credential and my Sports Illustrated, which has like my copy of Sports Illustrated had my name on it. So it has an address.
So your address.
Yeah.
Wow.
And then I think I missed my flight, and I think like as I was at the airport is when one aspect of that story came out, like maybe his lawyers, Josh Pastner's lawyers, put out some release, and so there's that going on. And then I got there to Pittsburgh. Well, you did have your wallet, Jim. Yeah. Oh yeah, actually I did. Yeah, my wife just reminded me. I didn't just have not my credit card. When I had my license, I didn't have my credit card either because I did. So I had nothing. But when I got there, I think like I was able to get in touch with someone that I needed to talk to for the story. So I ended up staying at the airport and writing, I think, something like that. And then it was like a blizzard, and so I was having a hard time getting a card to my hotel. And then I covered the game, and then So I'll remember Rich Stewart, who was the trainer at Tech. He let me, or maybe he was Mike Stamus, but one of the two lent me money just to kind of get me through this ordeal, and I was able to somehow get through security at the Pittsburgh airport, and then made it back to Atlanta and safely home. But there's nothing really to Tech. It's more about me and my feelings as a traveler.
Yeah.
But,
did you have to use that Sports Illustrated again on the way back from Pittsburgh?
Like I think that's what I got through. Yeah. Which I
used the same trick twice. Wow. So always carry a magazine to the airport is the lesson here. That's got your name and address on it.
Does it count as a real ID?
I guess that and my tech credential, which I mean you could make it home, I suppose, if you were.
It's decently official relative to state issued identification.
I mean, I don't know what I think about the fact that I got through with that, but I certainly am grateful. So
yeah. If you're ever in a pickle again at ATL, we've got a couple guys on the inside, so just let us know.
It's weird how much of our group chat is just airport talk. Like I'm just it's obnoxious how much of it is, but that's beside the point. Okay, grand finale. What do you think of the football uniforms?
Save the best one for last, of course.
Right? Yeah, the one that people care about. I don't know. I mean, when I saw it, I guess it's funny that the thing I care about, I don't know if I care about the most, but I care about a lot is how well can you read the numbers from a distance.
Oh, right. Yeah.
And I remember, that actually was going back to I think maybe the first year I was covering the team that they came out with like a yellow jersey with white numbers and you couldn't read it. Or maybe it was, it was gold numbers on white jersey. But either way, it was really hard to read. And so I don't I was looking at the white jersey with the metallic gold numbers, and I was trying to decide is this going to make it harder or easier for me to be able to see them from the press box? And so I don't know the answer to that. And so maybe that ultimately determined my opinion of the uniform itself. But I mean, I like it. I think I saw some tweets and even some of yours about how, I totally get the frustration of they have such a hard time. It seems like matching the golds and the number, like the material in the jersey number, ideally would be the same as pants or they not or closer. So, you know, I think it's one of those things that I don't know how much of a barometer Twitter is about anything, and because some people were griping about the you know the stripes not or the metallic look not being completely uniform. Is that a lot of people? Is that just 3 people and most people don't care? Most people like it, but I'm okay with that. I'm not. I guess ultimately it'll be can I see it on TV or on a press box? That'll probably determine my final opinion.
Honestly, I think that's an intriguing storyline going into the year is just how do they all look like. The metallic looks, I'm excited about that, but just like, like if that's something that gets eyes on the TV, see what do the new uniforms look like when they're actually out there? You gotta, I don't know. I'm looking forward to that. I'm looking forward to long. I feel like we didn't talk about football at all. Hopefully you're not too disappointed, but you gotta, it's July. You got to get the signposts out there, whether that's football or volleyball or something, because we're still a month out before things kick back up. So
I'm curious, what do you guys think about the uniforms?
I guess I did do a whole article about this last week. So I emailed Mike Flynn about it. I'm like, all right, here's what I need. I need to find out some things here. Based on what he told me, basically was that the gold thread, so not like the paint on the numbers or the striping, basically like was just whatever Adidas had on hand for the most part, unless a color they were able to fully customize, because gold is the hardest jersey color to get right.
Right.
So I mean, initially I think all of us thought it's like, wait a second, we saw the gold uniforms in 2019 when we played against Georgia, that matched like the rec. It matched the rest of the golds on the threads and on the helmet and everything. Like it seemed right finally compared to the Russell uniforms that had 4 shades of yellow from my count. And then this time it's like, wait a second, that's mustard. That's not the same color. And then it took me twice to ask Mike. I'm like, wait, do you get what I'm saying? He's like, yeah, it's basically Adidas just couldn't do. That's just what was there basically with the supply chain, and they use a different fabric than they did with the old set too. So. Yeah.
Interesting.
I'm interested to just see how they look in the sun. I've only seen studio shot type thing, so I'm withholding judgment. And also, if they're looking a little bit more retro, I know we've standardized around gold. Don't hate me, but like
don't shoot the messenger.
The throwbacks do look a little bit more mustardy. So if that's with all those Calvin Johnson highlights, it looks kind of like the stuff he was wearing. So like, if you couldn't tell, I'm a little bit agnostic about this kind of stuff. So,
don't think about what's on the field. Think about the past. So that's the message.
Jake is much more of our historian. As more of the kind of the uniform guy, or at least I wrote a couple of uniform columns back in the day. I've been more of the fashion nerd, but for me, it's I've sort of have mixed feelings, because I get the whole, and this reminds us of the past thing, but also I just can't get over the shade of gold that they used. I get it. I get the pant shade. Like I get the why it's very difficult to manufacture gold fabric, but at least in the studio shots, it looked better in the at kickoff at ACC Media Days. It looked better in those shots in real light, but in studio shots, it was definitely.
We'll also get multiple different lightings, because the first game's at the Benz. The roof will probably be closed, and then it's a day game against Ole Miss, and then a night game against West Carolina. So we'll see.
I will say the Benz's lighting is not a particular compliment to anything.
No,
that place is rough in terms of lighting.
It helps. You got to have daylight to see things much nicer than just the daylight.
So we'll see it versus Western Carolina. In week 2, in what I assume, what is that, a 7 p.m. or is that a noon? I forgot.
Ole Miss is a 3:30 and Western Carolina is a 7. Yeah.
Okay.
Wait, Western Carolina's a night game? Why am I just? Sorry, clearly I'm.
It's July, Jake. You said it yourself.
Don't worry about it. We don't have to think about this still.
Fair enough.
That's all the questions. That's all I had on my docket. Thanks for coming, Ken.
Do you have anything else for us? Like I didn't want to just grill you for an hour, but.
Well, actually, you mentioned one thing about the majors. You said there's only 2 that are different. Like there are two that are, I guess. What a good thing you're saying, like 2 that are significantly harder than the other ones.
Like in terms
2 that
of
are harder than the other ones. Like
Like
any
among the
engineering
three of
school?
us?
No. So like I think we were talking about like, Scheller and then.
Oh, yeah. So Jack was business administration, so he was in Scheller.
Right.
I was in the College of Computing. I was a computer science major, and Jake was a double degree, double jacket, mechanical engineering.
I got 2 mechanical engineering degrees, but drives me nuts when people get on high horses about, biomedical or aero or blah. It's all hard. We all now that Jack got out, we all got out. Like, no one was in underwater basket weaving. Like,
right. Yes. Yeah.
That's only at Georgia. That's one of their PE majors.
Mm.
We didn't get a dig in yet. I got to get one in.
I did interview Buzz in the spring, and he said underwater basket weaving was his major. So we still have one active major there, even though Buzz is banned from the CRC.
Buzz is banned from the CRC?
Yes, he is, because at one point Buzz jumped in and then didn't realize that you can't really swim in the suit and had to get pulled out, and so the CRC said no more of that. So that is why Buzz is not at swim meets. They just don't let him in the building in character anymore. Yeah. So like otherwise he probably would have been at ACCs. He probably would have been at a couple of those bigger meets we had ahead of.
Jack, what do you mean in character?
I've seen him there before. Like, this had to have been recent because, like,
this comes from the mouth of Buzz himself. This comes from the mouth of Buzz himself.
Wow.
He buzzed this to you?
He go read one of the last. It's like the third to last issue of the spring semester cover story of the Technique from this past spring.
Now that it's known and out there, one of the Buzzes who graduated this past spring was a swim club guy in the past. I hope it wasn't him. That'd be pretty embarrassing if they had to fish him out of the pool after he scored, top 5 in like 3 different events at nationals.
I don't remember what year this was, but
ignominious to say the least.
Yeah.
But
you think it'd be hard to police that? Because I mean, there's so many people that are working at the front door that you wouldn't know unless there's like a photo of "do not admit."
This is some behind the this is some behind the scenes, but not secrets. Is that when you like ask to like have Buzz come to your event or whatever, you have to like have basically a private room that they can change into the suit.
Okay.
And I guess you could kind of do that at the CRC, but it's much harder because all the bathrooms for the most part are public, and I don't know if the swim team would want the person who eventually comes out as this new character in like the private like varsity suites and whatnot. So it's the privacy actually is not as easy as you might think you would get at the CRC. So that could be part of just thinking logistically.
Interesting.
Just have him take over the sauna. That was always that
Yeah.
was always a tough sell for people when I was over at the CRC. But
I would imagine having Buzz in a sauna would be worse than having in a pool as far as like danger, personal danger.
Well, at least he can swim out of the sauna.
Yes. There's a door at least. There is a door.
Yeah.
All right.
All right. Well, Ken, thank you again for coming and speaking with us today. And thank you for your time. Is there anything you want to plug before we head out here?
Well, I mean, there's on the website, ajc.com, there's a steady stream of stuff. I wrote something today, actually, today is Wednesday, about, I finished a series of a state of the program stories I wrote about baseball, both basketballs, and today was football. So, and I spoke with Roddy Jones for the story. It was, insightful and candid as usual. And so he gave some good thoughts about just kind of where they are. And so it's kind of maybe taking a mile high view of where this team is and where they're going. So if readers are so inclined, I'd love to take a look at it.
Absolutely. So Ken, just for those of us who don't know, where can people find you online other than the website, Twitter,
right?
All your socials.
Okay. So Twitter, the handle is K Sugiura AJC, and I'll spell that. It's KSUGIURA AJC. So I am on Instagram, but I really don't use it, so it's not worth following. And Twitter is the best place to find me aside from the web page.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for joining us, and hopefully we'll get to talk to you again pretty soon once the season is going.
That would be good. I'm glad we got to talk. It's I always kind of been talking about it. I mean, we normally when I've done things like this or just with various tech fans is usually about football, basketball. So I'm always happy to talk about some other things and some of the larger, department-wide things going on. So yeah, thanks for your questions and interest.
If you ever have building related opinions too, we'll take that too in the future.
All right.
We're a podcast of multitudes.
Okay.
We are.
All right, Mr. Grant, why don't you take us home?
Yeah, thank you everyone for listening tonight. As always, you can find us at FTRS blog on Twitter. Jack and I are at JakeGrant98, at Jack Nicholas on Twitter. Akshay, you can try and find him, but best of luck with that. You can email us from the rumbleseat@gmail.com. As always, we appreciate comments, suggestions, future topics. I'm getting ahead of myself, but we really do appreciate that. And we use it to help build out our future schedule. In terms of where you can find our content, you can also find us at fromtherumbleseat.com, comment and things there as well. Podcasts, wherever fine podcasts are sold or distributed. But this has been Scions of the Southland. Thank you for listening. And as always, go Jackets. Thanks again, Ken.